Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of In My Opinion. My name is John.
My name is Lester.
And yes, welcome back to another episode. But as you can see, we have reverted back to our stay-at-home setup.
Yes.
Because it'd be the Wild West outside right now.
OG IMO fans will know about this setup because we have done this before last year during Circuit Breaker. Now it's a bit different. We are side by side. We're no longer being cut and spliced together. So you might see that sometimes there's a little bit of delay when John replies me or when I reply John because, internet stuff is not going to be as snappy as before. Life is like that. But please forgive us. Hopefully we get out of this phase 2 heightened alert as soon as possible. So we are just trying to do our part and make sure that everything is fine. You can go back to normal as soon as possible. So we urge everyone to socially distance as well.
Yes, that's right. And ladies and gentlemen, we recommend you all to stay at home as much as possible and stay safe, especially during this tough period with the new variant in Singapore. That being said, right, do follow us on Instagram. We are imo.pod on Instagram.
Yes.
We have a Telegram channel. You can find all the links in the description box below.
We recently crossed 100 members, which is to me pretty crazy. So you can definitely go and check it out. Go and share your opinions over there. I think we are quite nice. I would say we are nice people, John and I. So we have been trying to engage with people as much as we can, and the community has been pretty great. So see you guys there. And I mean, of course, this topic that we're going to be talking about is somewhat related to COVID, which is the whole reason why we are here, being socially distanced and everything. So
yes.
But if you have watched IMO from the start, our first episode actually talked a little bit about this, like the bad behaviour of Singapore's reaction to COVID and how badly we took it. And now...
now it's almost a year plus later, right? We are back here exploring this topic again because with phase 2 heightened alert and with some of the clusters exploding in some of our local locations, no longer in the dormitories kind of situation.
There
has been a rise of bad behaviour amongst Singaporeans in Singapore.
It's still bad. It's like we haven't learned our lesson yet, right? Have we?
We absolutely haven't.
And I think people are starting to panic as well. I mean, we have seen the panic buying in NTUCs and everything like that. So it's almost like we have seen this before because we have. So that's quite crazy. And but we are not going to focus so much on the panic buying, which is something that we focused a lot on the last time. We're going to be focusing more on a bit more pertinent issues in our mind, which is discrimination and xenophobia and the such. And if you know IMO, you know that we haven't really broached this topic as much before because we recognize how sensitive it is. So we also hope that everyone will be sensitive in the comments down below before we get into it.
Yeah.
And with that, John,
and as with all topics that are sensitive and with a lot of points of contention, a lot of angles that we can be approached from, right? We ask you to explore this topic with us in an intellectual manner. We may get things wrong, but we always go into conversations ready to have our opinions change. So please join us and let's be kind to one another and let's learn something, and hopefully by the end of this episode, we're all better people.
Yeah, let's try to have a good conversation. I mean, it's the two of us for the first time in a long time. So you're getting used to this whole new setup. But I know we start into the first big news that came out from the whole situation.
Let's be, because you mentioned about discrimination and xenophobia. Let's start with discrimination first, which I think is something that recently made headlines in the news, right? Where they talk about nurses and healthcare workers facing discrimination in Singapore because there has been a cluster that began in Tan Tock Seng General Hospital. Right? Yeah, and that has been not too good towards some of the nurses because when people recognize nurses, they face certain discriminatory behaviour like being shunned by landlords and stuff like that, which is not cool lah.
I mean, not cool is an understatement. that's like when the cool teacher is telling you hey, not cool, man. But in reality, it's just all sorts of messed up. Especially because they are the people who are the frontliners who are putting their life on the line for us. And I mean, they didn't choose to be in this situation, right? I mean, whatever went through with Tan Tock Seng, it was very, very unfortunate. And I'm not saying that no one made mistakes. I'm quite sure they have made some mistakes within the system and maybe within the visitors or whatever. They're still doing their own investigations, but they have tried to stop the problem or solve the problem as soon as possible. And they definitely didn't ask to be in that position. No one wants to be in this position. But yet, even though they're trying to fight it during their workplace and like trying to be as safe as possible and keep their patients safe as possible, when they come out, they're not being received with the same amount of like respect and like gratitude as they should be, which is what's most disappointing about this whole thing.
It is extremely disappointing because you think about it, okay, let's take a step back and explore why this is even happening in the first place. I understand that it's probably driven by fear, right? By fear and ignorance, which is highly, understandable in a situation like the pandemic where we're fighting an invisible enemy. This one I totally understand. But the thing about it is that like we cannot succumb to fear and do hateful things.
I agree.
Right? It's okay to be scared, right? But you must recognize that these people are on the front lines because you don't want to be. These people are on the front lines because you can't be. They're on the front lines trying to be our first line of defense. We do not, they do not deserve to be viewed as second class citizens,
or like dangerous,
just because they are facing a dangerous threat, because without them there will be a lot more problems in our country. And this is why I feel that it is extremely disappointing that we have devolved from being wary of migrant workers, being wary of dormitories, panic buying, to being xenophobic. And I feel it's further exacerbated because in Singapore, I hate to say this, we're assholes. We're very good at trying to cast foreigners as enemies and as bad people. And the unfortunate truth is that in the healthcare sector, there are a lot of foreigners working in the healthcare sector.
Yeah. And I mean, they even come into like the next piece of news, which is like basically there were other nurses. I don't think she's from Tan Tock Seng, but there's a nurse that got kicked off the bus for carrying a uniform home in a plastic bag just because she needs to wash it, not just wants to wash it, needs to wash it and everything. So she got kicked off the bus and apparently other people also asked her to leave, right? It's not just the one person. So I mean,
so like maybe I just reiterate the story a little bit because we saw this article on Mothership. Basically, this nurse was bringing a set of clothing to change out her uniform to go home, and she did the same on that particular day. So her uniform was in like an NTUC plastic bag. Apparently, one of the bus passengers noticed that the nurse was carrying her uniform in the plastic bag and shouted at her to get off the bus. And the sad situation is that not only did other passengers not jump in to defend the nurse, a few of the other passengers also insisted that she get off.
That is crazy. I mean, okay, I want to reiterate what John said. Like, it's not something that we say that like we don't at least we at least somewhat empathize with this behavior, even though it's very, very misplaced. I mean, it's fear driven and we're all scared at this point of time. Like, we can sit here and be like, yeah, everyone needs to calm down. But in reality, one, because we are very privileged that we get this position to not worry as much. And secondly, we are also very scared. I was very worried. John was very worried. So it's not like we can't fully understand where their worry is, or like the fact that they worry for their safety, or like they worry for the safety of the family. But at the same time, these worries
I feel like we understand the level of fear.
We understand the level of fear. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but what we cannot agree with personally, I cannot agree with it, and I absolutely think it's completely disgusting and despisable, and I don't like. I sincerely wish that you were not part of my country. Is the fact that you do this kind of thing to people.
Man, I mean that's very harsh, but I do agree that like I think it's very misplaced. The fear we understand. Everyone understands the fear because we are all scared, at least a little bit inside. But the way we respond to that fear is what defines us as a country and defines us as people beyond everything else. So as human beings, and unfortunately, what we are doing right now, or what we are displaying right now, it's not the best behavior. It's not the behavior we want to show the younger generation, or show other people, or heck, even show ourselves. So that's
this
just
is
crazy,
the kind of deplorable, inhumane behavior that we try to teach our kids not to do, but then we act upon it ourselves when we are faced with fear, right? That is just pure cowardice. And in no place, I don't believe that in Singapore that we are cowards. If you have the gall to demand that someone exit the bus out of fear, then you really need to do some reflecting because you are a coward.
Man, harsh words, man.
Not because you're afraid of the disease, but because you think you can exercise your privilege and power over a healthcare worker who, last year we were just celebrating as healthcare heroes.
Yeah, remember the whole clapping for a healthcare worker thing?
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, if I'll hope that if you had clapped for the healthcare worker, that you'll be able to understand how messed up this is. And I'm sure most Singaporeans understand how messed up this is. We're not saying that all Singaporeans are messed up, but there's enough of them to have this as a problem because this is not an isolated incident. We can sit here and say like, oh, it's a Tan Tock Seng thing, or oh, it's just an isolated incident thing, but it's definitely not. In fact, there was one more incident about, I think it was a nurse who's like their house actually got like sprayed with like disinfectant and soap water and all that because they're just like a frontline worker.
Yeah. Honestly, there are so many incidents. These are the ones that make the headlines, right? Yeah. And then the most recent one, which I believe a number of you will have probably seen, right, will be the one whereby, like Alistair mentioned, they will spray soapy water in front of their door, spray disinfectant at their door, and then like chant like virus, and then say they're like dirty, which actually, affected the health of like their children or that kind of thing because the smell make their children like cough and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. This person, the person who lived in that house that was being thrown with soap and whatever, is also a nurse.
Yeah. Is that the reason why she like this whole thing happened?
We don't know for sure, but I dare say it's not a stretch to assume so.
Yeah. Which is crazy. I mean, I don't understand how is there enough people that these things come out. And I mean, there are a lot of people who will say that like, they used to say that, oh, Singapore, when we discriminate, for example, we are not as violent or we are not as outright with our discrimination. It's a bit more subtle. But I think, COVID, I mean, it's not just Singapore, but the whole world. COVID brings out the best in the society and also brings out the worst. And I mean, we are just showing that like, it's very possible. We no longer can say with certainty that like, we won't like, I guess, devolve to a point where assaults or like a bit more drastic actions are taken by society based on like very baseless or irrational feelings or emotions. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy that this is happening, and it's crazy that it's gotten worse. I think that's what disappoints me more. I thought we learned our lesson from CB, right? Like I thought
we didn't learn.
Yeah, because this is not the first time we heard this, right? I mean, we have during the CB period, there was also the whole like, oh, healthcare workers were being denied from Grabs or taxis and everything because they're scared, and then we all like, oh my god, that's messed up. Like then Grab even did this whole thing where they have like Grab just for healthcare workers because these people want to help out. They want to help the healthcare workers and they want to show their gratitude. So it did end in a positive note, which makes me think they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we have gone somewhere. And then immediately after the Tan Tock Seng cluster came out and immediately after the phase 2 thing came out, it's just madness just descended back onto us. And I think it's more disappointing than anything that we haven't learned. Or in fact, some might even argue it's gotten worse. Who knows, right? Do you think it's gotten worse actually?
Yeah. I think it didn't necessarily get worse. It just surfaced in more outward ways. Because I guess there's the mix of the fatigue of being in this pandemic for God knows how long, right?
Yeah.
And not seeing a clear end in sight, right? And like a lot of times people's emotions get driven towards negative expressions when experiencing this kind of emotional battering which I can only think of as the only concession I can give to people who do bad things like this. When you are in distress yourself, it's easy to display negative behavior onto other people.
Yeah.
Which I think is normal, right? But still cowardly and not good And like this is where I feel we deserve to treat each other better and see the human behind the people we are about to do harm to.
Yeah, and I think the whole I think it's worse that it directly hurt someone. directly causes emotional pain to someone, and in the later examples, sometimes even physical pain, and or like at least some form of like crazy distress. And I think that makes
it
it
is.
worse.
It's true.
It's like,
Correct.
at least for the panic buying or something, like I'm not saying that panic buying is fine, and I think it's bad because it perpetuates a very distressing image to everyone. It makes everyone unnecessarily panicky and do stupid shit, like go into crowds when you're not supposed to. But inherently, panic buying might not be as destructive as direct discrimination. So
Yeah, it's true.
As much as I remember we did an episode about the fact that like we can kind of empathize why people might panic buy, and we might want to like, I guess, try to meet in the middle ground and try to understand a little bit more. But for this, I think we really don't want to. Or at least I don't think that there is much of a middle ground for this.
There isn't much of a middle ground. This is pure discrimination. And on the topic of discrimination, and you talk about how some of these actions manifested more violently, right? We spoke about discrimination towards nurses. Now a new kind of discrimination is happening, right?
Yes.
Xenophobic ones. And sometimes the people who bear the brunt of this are Singaporeans who are Indian.
Yeah. And I mean, there are like a few cases, like one of the cases that went very viral was she was exercising, so she had a mask down, I think a little bit, or mask off.
Yeah.
And then she got physically assaulted. So
yes.
This is a Singaporean Indian. So it's not even...
Yes.
It's not, not that it matters, but it's Singaporean Indian, and she just got assaulted. And that really goes against the whole narrative of the people who were saying that like, oh, Singaporeans are not as insidiously racist or not as, I guess, violent in our racism.
Yeah.
Which is what,
I mean,
to be fair, me and John used to believe as well until now lah.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to jog your memory on the incident, it was this middle-aged Indian lady who was doing her exercise in the park around her estate.
Yeah.
Right. And then, as you do, when people are exercising, you have your mask off or your mask down. And then what happened was someone approached her and kicked her, and she fell to the ground and she was like injured and everything lah. And like the pictures, the corresponding pictures, made it to social media. And like that's
crazy.
The one I really cannot wrap my head around it lah.
It's very sad. It's very depressing, for lack of a better word. I don't like to throw that word around lightly, but it really truly makes us feel very heavy. Because you want to go,
there's
John?
no justification, at all. For having done any of these things. It is purely from a place of hate.
Yeah.
That was driven by fear and ignorance. Right? And if people still dare to say that like, oh, racism or xenophobia doesn't really exist in Singapore, then this alone is a symptom that it does.
Yeah. And I mean, we have, and I hate to rehash this again, but we have been through this before. Like when the migrant worker situation was crazy in the past, like during the circuit breaker period, there are like, especially a lot of this, I guess, anti-foreigner or anti-migrant worker sentiments. They're like, oh, deport all of them back, or like, why they around? Sometimes I see them like chilling around. I don't feel safe. And then there are obviously there are very xenophobic comments on Facebook, which we are all very used to, but still doesn't hurt any less to see. So, like, it's crazy I'm someone who, John and I are people who try to be very, I guess, on the middle ground. We try to bridge the gap. We try to be as neutral as we can. But I think this is one of those situations that I don't think we can be very neutral about.
I think this is quite cut and dry.
Yeah, it is.
Hateful behaviour. And this person that perpetrated the crime deserves to be locked away for a long time.
Yeah, and right? There's also the...
properly reformed.
Yeah, and there's also like the whole... In America, they also do the whole Stop Asian Hate movement, or like the Black Lives Matter movement and everything. And I know for a fact there are a lot of people who support that movement and who believe in that as well. So I hope we'll be able to extend the same level of, I guess, fervent support for anti-racist behaviors or anti-xenophobic behaviors to our own home. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I think we just need to be more wary of like our inherent like I guess biases, especially towards people who are not from our own like group in group. And we have talked
Yeah,
about it before. Like racism is not something that will ever go away because it's almost somewhat ingrained in us. We will have our own in group. Whether is it a clique that you love within your secondary school, it can be even a class. It doesn't need to be based on race. It can be based on anything. It can be your own family. There's an in group that you have, and unfortunately, as humans, we don't take the out group very well, and that's why a lot of this racist behavior happens. But as what John said before, and I believe as well, I believe we should be at a point where we transcend that human basic primal instinct.
yeah. That's the thing. And you know, like how grey now these racism things exist. Because, you know, the fact that there is a new variant that began in India, right? It has become another point for people, another angle for people to approach this racism.
Yes.
There's, racism towards purely because of skin color, you know, and then talk about anti-Sika as if it is not targeted at the fact that it's Indian.
Yeah, and yeah, there's the whole. I'll link the Kopi Instagram post that went quite viral. But if you haven't seen it before, I'll link it down in the description box. But they talked a little bit about like the anti-Sika sentiments. Or people basically for the uninitiated, the TLDR. Even though I really suggest you read. But if you the TLDR, just for some context, is that they basically don't want foreign domestic workers or migrant workers to be in Singapore,
especially from India,
to
come into Singapore.
Yeah, and
like
that's crazy to me.
Yeah, and like you know, some of this hatred and anti-Sika racist sentiments, right, are very. You know, people always like feel that like, you know, oh, they're just people trolling on the internet or saying, but there are some dark things that are being said here. Okay. So I give you an example of a screenshot that we got from this Facebook group called Abolish Sika. You can go and check it out on Facebook, but this Facebook group exists. Okay.
Yeah.
And the post is that this is the second time Bastard Facebook has banned me in 2 weeks. All my posts are gone. I shared about how many times of India are saying the rapes are continuing even now. End quote. That's just broken English, but you know, you can go and see the. But I want to zoom in on one of the comments that was said here, right?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Someone mentioned that one of the comments in reply to that is done by one of these curry-loving cockroaches, whom is also reading this. So they're trying to say that someone infiltrated the group, and it's a curry-loving cockroach that reported the group or the post. I want you to think about that sentence, that phrase, curry-loving cockroaches. Like, the last time I heard, right, someone being called a cockroach, right, was in a very impactful movie about discrimination and profiling that has always sat with me, right? And you know, people don't hear this term cockroach enough because it's never used to describe someone unless it's like you truly abhor this person, right?
Yeah.
I heard it in the show Hotel Rwanda.
Oh,
I don't know if you've heard of it before.
Yeah, I have.
Where the Hutus and the Tutsis were hating each other in Africa, in Rwanda, and they called each other like cockroaches. If I'm not wrong, the term was something along the lines of some Tutsi cockroaches or something like that. And this is, you know, this comment just makes me very sad. Because
it does.
The Facebook user, I will not reveal who this person is, but the Facebook user clearly looks like he is from a Chinese race.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Saying like something like this, whether it was done as if it was like a very lousy, bad, dark joke, it's still not the way to treat our fellow man.
Yeah, I mean, and that's putting it lightly, man.
Yeah, I can't find better words to describe this kind of behavior besides it being very, very deplorable? Because what kind of impact are you trying to have on society by saying these kind of things?
I almost said that I would like to know where he's coming from, but at the same time I really don't. I don't think there's any reason to feel this way or any reason to think this way. And I know at the end of the day it's probably the minority. Right? Or at least I
would say it's probably
the minority.
That's the only hopeful note that we can think about. It's like, it's the minority. But the fact that, they're still being named as curry-loving cockroaches, right?
Yeah.
Whoever these people they're trying to indicate are like, it's crazy to me, that we've reached the 21st century and people are still, using this kind of very derogatory labels on a whole group of people and not just a person that they hate.
And to use such a crazy word or like use such a, I guess, hateful sentiment, you can only imagine like if this is what he's willing to put on Facebook. I really wonder what he's willing to or think or say in person versus a more public platform.
I have to say that in Singapore, people are pussy like that because of the anonymity of the internet. They can post whatever they want, but in real life, if they brush past some person that they are trying to reference, they will probably not say anything. And this is particularly hurtful because the trail goes cold on the internet. And what if this is picked up by someone who is less discerning or understanding, like a child?
It's a very bad example, and I'm quite sure like most of us have had experiences of like the people around us or like the people you encounter being very racist. And especially if you are a child and you don't really have a mind of your own yet, you tend to internalize these things. So even if, let's say if you're Chinese and these things are being said and you hear these things, there's a very high chance that you will end up, accepting these very skewed notions.
Internalizing some of these things and thinking that that's the truth.
And if you are like of the minority race, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there's a whole thing of psychology that I won't go into, but it's a real thing because they start to internalize the hate for themselves, and that's a very, very, very distressing thing to have to go through. So
and that is that's the worst sign of how society is going. So whoever these people are, I think you all should reflect and do better lah, huh?
I know.
Before we go into any more case studies, I'm so sorry. We have a lot more to share, but we have to take a short camera break, and we will be right back.
BRB, guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back from our camera break, and yes, we're just gonna give you some of our concluding thoughts about today's episode, and then I mean, this episode has left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth because it makes me feel like because of the pandemic, we as a society have taken a step back, which is very unfortunate because what are we doing, man? What are we doing? We ought to be advancing. We ought to be coming together because of the pandemic, but instead of that, we are the ugly behavior is surfacing so much so that our fellow Singaporeans are afraid of our fellow Singaporeans. And there's more that we can do for each other than apart from each other. And this is something that I don't know all these people need to get over and understand. Because what they're doing right now is very detrimental to a country that's trying to recover from the pandemic. We don't want to become a country where because of our primal instincts towards in-groups, we spread hatred towards one another. We don't want to become that. We always like to think that we're better than other people, and then here is an opportunity for us to actually be better than other people. And this is what we ought to be doing. We cannot generalize just because of a virus or just because of our internal biases an entire country, an entire community, or an entire group of people. And the last time somebody properly did that it resulted in a Holocaust.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll get to that extreme. I'll also say hopefully, but I don't think we are going to get to that extreme. But it doesn't need to.
I agree with you. Okay, I agree with you that we are probably optimistic and we're probably realistic to say that we will not get to the extreme. But how scary these kind of things is that someone back in the day probably thought the same way in Germany.
Yeah, and I mean beyond that is also it doesn't need to get that bad for it to be bad. And
Absolutely.
I think we have said this before, but we don't see the point in comparison with other countries. We don't see the point in thinking, but Singapore better than other countries. What
we are not racing to the bottom, right? We always say this.
Exactly. So this is a problem that we are obviously facing, and we need to solve it. That's as simple as that, and we need to do something about it. And I mean, we haven't filmed such a depressing IMO episode in a very, very long time. And I haven't felt like this down in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So
it's a very shitty thing. And honestly, I feel that, okay, if there's one thing that I can say is that I feel that people can have internal biases, you can have your own sentiments, and those are really hard to change. You know what? Fine. That one I give it to you.
Yeah.
Then how about shifting your energies instead? Focusing on trying to change all that negative energy and push it towards fixing the pandemic and fixing your behavior in the pandemic instead of trying to find people to hate.
Yeah.
I get that people are scared. I get that there's a lot of negative emotion. Channel the energy into, I don't know, washing your hands 20 times a day, cleaning your house 5 times a day, disinfecting your own place 10 times a day. If you do all that right, you're way too tired to hate on people.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, of course, this whole episode is, I think, a little bit different from normal IMOs. We tend to be a bit more optimistic on IMOs. We tend to try to engage in, I guess, a bit more, not say nuance, but a little bit more middle ground discussions, or we try to give practical solutions. But I feel like this is a time for us to put our feet down and say that we are definitely not for this behavior. And I mean, practical solutions wise is something that we want to discuss in another episode, because this is such a big problem. Like the whole problem of xenophobia, of racism, of discrimination is such a big problem and large problem that I've said before will probably never be solved within our lifetime. So it's something we'll talk about more. But in the meantime, I think that talking about these issues and being able to, I guess, put it on people's minds, or like have people talk about it more in your own like lives and with your family or whatever, is important in the meantime. And I'll also leave some like donation links down below if you are financially capable and you want to donate. I'll link it down in the description box and the comment section as well. So definitely please go and consider donating. That'll mean a lot to the underprivileged.
Yep, and this is a really heavy topic to discuss, and I do understand that there are a lot of racial undertones that go into this. I highly encourage anyone who has any examples of these stories. If you would like to share, you can always share it in our comment section or in our Telegram chat.
Please do.
And then we can always discuss that, and then hopefully everyone as a community will be able to come together to understand each other better. Because in a world that is being ravaged by disease, the last thing we need is for humans to fight humans.
Yeah, I remember I had this conversation with John where we said that like we need a ultra big boss to unite the world together. Like
we need a big visible common enemy. Right?
Yeah. And
you know what? The world has been in basically pandemic lockdown, various parts of the world for close to 2 years already. If it's not big enough, I don't know what is lah. Basically, COVID has served half of its NS going to ORD already, and we are still busy fighting each other.
Yeah, and I hope we will be able to step up, because this is whether we like it or not, COVID is going to be here to stay for a while. And
absolutely.
I've already thrown out my hopes and dreams of it ending by the end of the year. Hopefully it does, but I'm not holding my breath here. So I think it's a good time, if anything, to unite and to like bring each other up and to try to help out everyone. And this is our extension to everyone who you want to share your story, please DM us.
Yeah.
Please share it in the Telegram channel, and
Yes.
we will promise that
Okay.
we will our community will be very nice, and our community is very, very, very welcoming. And if they are not, we will be there to protect you. And that's the promise that me and my admins will have. So
Yep.
please feel free to share your stories, or if you want to come on the show, also feel free to just DM me and tell me your story, and we'll talk. So hopefully we'll be able to
if you're I mean, besides sharing these stories, if you've got any messages of hope and encouragement for our healthcare workers,
yes.
I believe that would be greatly appreciated. They don't see those enough on the internet, and
Yeah, I mean, man, it feels weird to end the IMO like this. Does it?
It does, but sometimes not all stories have a happy ending immediately. But
it's not. Yeah.
Things without a happy ending always have a teachable moment. So I guess this is our teachable moment. As a society, we can all do better, lah. Huh?
We can. I mean, we're not perfect as well. We are trying to figure out ways that individually I can do better, and I'm quite sure John is doing the same. We are trying to, I guess, expand our knowledge, trying to talk to people, and trying to challenge ourselves and challenge our thoughts, or our thinking processes. So, I just hope everyone can do the same, and hopefully we will be able to unite better. And with that, on this very, very heavy note,
stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. Very heavy note, man.
Wear extra masks.
Yeah, extra mask. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Wear the correct mask.
Wear the correct mask.
Wear extra mask if you want to.
2 layers.
Don't need to hot the mask.
Don't need a hot mask. Everything
Stay
is
safe.
good. The government one is fine. So I
Don't
wish
need
I'm pretty
to
sure
go
most
out.
will have.
Don't go out.
Yeah. I mean, stay safe, and I know mental health wise, a lot of people are not doing as well right now. Hopefully, last week's episode about resilience helped you a lot and helped you a little bit. If you haven't watched, go and check it out as well. Stay safe. You want to exercise, you can, I guess, go out for a jog a little bit.
Yeah.
Drink more water, wear your mask, try not to socialize as much, and hopefully you get through this together. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next week.
Peace out.
Bye.